think about the mind as being like a house with many rooms, most of which we're very familiar with. But sometimes it's as though a doorway appears from out of nowhere, and it opens onto a staircase. We climb the staircase and experience a state of altered consciousness. The world's many religions have found so many ways to help people climb this staircase. Some shut down the self using meditation. Others use psychedelic drugs. But you don't need a religion to get you through the staircase. Lots of people find self-transcendence in nature. Others overcome their self at raves.
Can we go back up to the room for a second? I forgot my whip.
Yeah, sure. No
yeah, that's fine.
So what is a hive switch? Well, it's a hypothetical neural reward mechanism that is triggered by the presence of a bunch of other people. It's stronger the more people you have, and it's stronger when you feel somehow connected to the other people by culture, fandom, ideology. And it's even stronger when you're physically with the other people doing the same thing at the same time. Bonus points if you all have the same goal in mind, and if you don't achieve the goal, you'll die. This hive switch has rendered us capable of some very interesting behaviors. Trust me, this is impressive cooperation for primates. Now, when I say the hive switch is a hypothetical mechanism, I mean we've not done a lot of directly observing it in the brain. We certainly don't have the circuitry mapped out or anything like that, but there is a decent bit of literature on the neuroscience of religious experience and meditation related things. Personally, I'm not going to be satisfied until I can get, like, optogenetic implants in an entire marching band, but I've been told I'm difficult to please. So, for the time being and for the foreseeable future, the hive switch is just a theory. But it's a theory you can feel, that manifests in behaviors you can see. And humans do it independent of blood relation. It's patriotism, fandom, good old-fashioned tribalism. That feeling of elevation, of being part of something bigger than yourself, of dissolving into the group. That's the hive switch. And it's not as binary as a switch. It's not so much on-off. It's more of a slider, like a dimmer switch. You might feel it a little bit when you're with a small group of close friends, and then even more at something like a concert, and even more at a church service. And it feels really good. We derive a lot of pleasure from it. Humans love hiving up. We love getting into big groups and liking the same stuff and doing the same thing. We are fucking into it. But why? How did this evolve? Well, John Haidt, who coined the term hive switch, as well as some other smart folks, hypothesize it's because humans underwent at least a little bit of multi-level selection. I'll do an entire episode covering this debate at some point, but for the moment, here is a primer. Most briefly, natural selection refers to the process by which variability in reproductive success leads to changes in the overall genetic composition of the following generation. The selective pressures that act on a population, environmental, social, and so on, affect how many kids each individual has. Fitness under natural selection is determined by an individual's ability to reproduce, and to survive long enough to do that. Obviously. The phrase survival of the fittest originally referred to this definition of fitness. Fitness at a baseline is a personal struggle, individual to the organism. You are more fit if you reproduce more, and perpetuating your genes by having your children is an effort that you undertake by yourself, with at least a little help from one other individual for those who reproduce sexually. The various pressures of natural selection are certainly acting on the level of the individual. There is what's called inclusive fitness, which encompasses at least the individuals around you who share your genetics, but it still comes down to one's own genes. No one is arguing about any of that. However, in ultrasocial animals like humans and eusocial animals like some insects and two types of mole rat, some people hypothesize that there was also selection at the group level. Which means that selective pressure was not just acting on the individual, but also at the level of the group. In cases where intergroup competition is really fierce, you could have entire hives, entire colonies, entire tribes competing against each other. If the fate of the group really is dependent upon that group cooperating, then it's not just every person or bee or mole rat for himself. The debate is whether or not selection can function on groups of organisms. Detractors of multi-level selection express doubt that individual organisms can congeal into superorganisms such that they operate as units upon which selection can act, even temporarily. Anyway, we're still working all this out. Scientists have been fighting about this for a very long time, and the debate through the decades has swayed from side to side, being more or less settled. It is currently, at this point in history, a controversial topic. And really, it probably won't ever be settled. It's a very difficult thing to prove one way or the other. Personally, I'd like to see us come to a compromise. John Haidt has said that we are 90% chimp and 10% bee. I think that sounds about right. To be clear, this isn't a direct, literal comparison of primates to bees. Human hiving and bee hiving are, in the proximate sense, driven by very different things. This language is intended to describe the sort of phase shift we experience upon participation in group efforts. It's a metaphor, communicating a complex truth about human ethology that I'm only scratching the surface of here. I'm really hoping you selfish gene types can settle for being 90% correct. 90%? Can you take the deal? Anyway, that's an ongoing argument in science. Let's talk about something that's a little bit more settled in trying to explain this. Something a bit more rewarding. Yeah.
Shut the fuck up.
Right. So, reward in the context of neuroscience refers to the neural mechanisms by which particular activities are rewarded. In other words, reward is how certain thoughts and behaviors make you feel good. Reward is often associated with the neurotransmitter dopamine, which modulates the mesolimbic reward pathway. This reward pathway is important to all sorts of motivated behavior, up to and including the development and maintenance of addiction. Reward can be generated by many different stimuli, things like food, sex, drugs, and social contact. I reckon the hive switch would fall under the last one, so I looked into what we currently know about social reward and how it's coded in the brain. Depending on the technique used to observe activity and where in the brain you look, there's evidence for both a common currency model that codes for reward salience across types or modalities, as well as a modality-specific model that differentiates between different types or categories of reward. Based on the research, it seems there could be common currency coding at the systems level, while modality-specific details are being coded at the level of individual neurons. Regardless, all of this coding serves to properly inform you about the reward you're experiencing, specifically what it is and how rewarding it is. Behaviorally, reward serves as a goal. When you encounter reward, you are more likely to repeat the behaviors that led up to that reward in the future. There's a lot more to know about reward, but that'll do for now. So, bringing this back around, I suspect that the hive switch is a particular flavor of social reward that developed as a consequence of humans having undergone a little bit of multi-level selection. Again, talking like 10%. Work with me here. I've been glossing over religion a lot, because I feel like that definitely needs its own video, but for the moment, I just want it to be known that we did evolve to see sacredness all around us, and it would seem that the lack of belief in a god does not tamp down this drive. Secular society and the internet have both altered how people hive, but we are still very much doing it. I think it's important to get these urges out in fun, healthy ways.
Alright guys, you know what to do. We need some fucking therapy after that, that's for sure.
Otherwise, it ends up spilling out into inappropriate places.
Would you like to hear the answer or not?
No!
Fuck what you gotta say!
Let's save that for later. What's the moral of the story? Humans are not only selfish, but groupish. We enthusiastically coalesce into hives along cultural and moral lines and then act in the interest of the group. We are capable of incredible feats when we're all on the same page.
Do you think they're there pursuing their self-interest? Or are they pursuing communal interest, which requires them to lose themselves and become simply a part of a whole?
It feels good to lose yourself in a worthy cause, to devote yourself to a higher, more altruistic calling. It feels ecstatic in a way that nothing else does, to transcend one's profane, selfish desires and fulfill a nobler purpose. That's the crux of the hive switch. It rewards the dissolution of self with euphoric feelings of personal elevation. Human cooperation is the most fantastic and devastating power ever unlocked by nature, and we need to be careful with it, especially because it can be really fun and fulfilling. So remember to hive responsibly.